It seems that my initial presumptions are finally starting to materialize, and I've had a feeling we've been building to where we'll be in the next 2 months from now for a long time. I've said as much concerning Dead by April in past coverage of their work. We have had in total, and I might be off of my number a bit, so forgive me because I'm going off memory here, 8 or 9 single releases over a 2-year period. And typically of another group you'd think, okay, a single release usually brings about a simultaneous or shortly subsequent album announcement. And yet nothing from Dead by April. It's very, from my experience, unusual to the pattern of their releases. Maybe you'll have like one single or two, but there's usually an album tied to those debuts. So some standalone singles, and again, I'm not saying that that's necessarily bad. You know, I'm happy to listen to Dead by April music, especially when it comes out faster and sooner. You know, I've been a big fan of theirs for a number of years. But in the back of my mind, you know, I've been piecing that, you know, I can't discount it because I'm like, okay, here's another single, you know, to add on to the grand total, and at this point we've had more than enough to constitute to exceed the average duration of an EP, and we're nearing that of a full album. So when's a new album coming? Or is it just going to basically be a compilation of everything we've heard thus far? I heard about this in passing. I did confirm today because I didn't see the original posting, but apparently May 5th is when we can expect a new album release, and from what I've heard, it's going to be a bunch of new debuts. I don't know for sure if this is a single release off of that. I'm assuming it is, given the proximity to that album debut. I can confirm that later. Maybe some of you can clarify down below as well if you know for sure. But Dreamlike is coming out in advance of this. Well, not in advance. The announcement came out first, but Dreamlike is following up. And I'm really excited to hear about it. You know, I love being able to spotlight groups such as Dead by April on this channel. Many of you know who perhaps have been exposed to my work before, but I've covered them 4 times in total from some of their more recent releases, and I absolutely loved every one of those pieces, including all the singles that I've heard and all their music. I think I've got every one of their tunes on my phone at this point. Dead by April really is a group of capable artists. Again, I've been a fan of them for probably 7-8 years at this point. I would think maybe 9. I don't know. Time flies. But, you know, many of you are aware of how much the European metal scene matters to me, not just as a devoted metalhead, but just because of the level of talent out there. But they don't necessarily have the origin point that other groups that I've covered on this channel do, wherein most of those are first introductions that I take on faith with you. And many of you as well know how much I love covering music on this channel. It is my favorite of the art forms in the entertainment industry, if you want to call it that. And, you know, for me, it very much is... It's been an aspiration since I started this channel to bring music into a grander form alongside some of those other entertainment outlets and styles. For me, it really is just such a personal first devotion in my life, and Dead by April is just another talent that I found quite capable. A Swedish metal group, if you're not familiar with it, very prominent electronic drive. And electronic music has not always been my favorite, right? Music is very personalized according to its listeners' tastes, but I found that Dead by April has grown a bit of an appeal, and I've since explored around of other European groups that have taken the same components and applied them in the construction of their music, and I find it to actually be quite advantageous and unique in attribution of European talent and in the use of their works. It's fascinating to me, but I love groups such as Dead by April. I've loved covering them in the past, so of course when Dreamlike was announced, it's like, heck yeah, I'm ready. Let's hear more from them. And maybe, you know, for some of you this will be a first introduction. I'm assuming many of you are going to come at this video knowing Dead by April, and that's, you know, great, of course. I've had plenty of great exchanges with those of you who are familiarized with many of the talents I spotlight, which sometimes, you know, I consider, and I always judge music according to my personal social circle, that most of the names that I regard in my frequent re-listens are not shared among people that I know. But through correspondence with you and offering collaborative experiences and enjoying music together, especially on a first impression, it's been great to have at least some sense of familiarity that, you know, I'm not the only one in the world that is a fan of Dead by April, and there's a number of you. I've had, again, specific to this group, exchanges with those of you in the past who also are familiarized to this group's capabilities. And some of you, I'd imagine, are approaching this as well, you know, from a first impression perspective. Take it on faith from me as, again, a listener of theirs for maybe near a decade at this point, probably, in truth. You're going to like what you hear. If you're a metal fan, you're into something of more of an independent sound with the I don't say independent like in the sense of indie, but something a little more original execution from what I'm familiarized to in other camps. If you like something of a dominant electronic twist, capable vocals, some great screams I'm part of, and I did correct this, you know, because I've said in the past, I always forget his name, Christopher, their new screaming vocalist, alongside Pontus Helm, who's so capable. I love listening to him. I think you're going to really love what Dead by April has to offer. Though we're going to have a collaborative experience together and enjoying Dreamlike for the first time. With a music video to tag along, so we're going to get a visual experience as well, which is, par for the course in past works of theirs. So I'm going to go ahead and cue up this piece again. This might be a herald specifically to the new album. I don't know. It may just be in every single release. Again, feel free to clarify if you know for sure. But I'm game to hear it. I'm going to go ahead and cue it up. And if you're not familiarized with how I format coverage on this channel, and perhaps my work is new to you, I do try and accommodate listener taste to the best extent that I can. So if you'd like to read along with the lyrics of the piece, and we'll talk about the message, of course, after we listen to the track together and put it together with the message, which I've already previewed for myself. And actually, it's pretty cool narration. I will provide the lyrics for you in the video feed, and if you choose to read along, they'll track along with the song as we go proceeding through it. All right, Dreamlike. I like this name, by the way, and the cover art too is great. Probably one of my favorites from the single releases in consideration of every one of the other ones. All right, here we go. Dreamlike. Okay, I like the opener. The modulation's pretty nice. It's been 20 long years of prepping, not enough tears. I've become a summer for my feet. Dominant beat with a nice integration between background and Pontus's vocals. That sounds really interesting. This is a bit different, at least for me. Oh, not bad. I like the keyboard undertones, too. And we haven't heard Christopher doing many clean vocals from my experience before. He's got a nice voice. This is very Dead by April on some of the key aspects of the track, but it has this different flavor. For me, in key choice, it's almost like Dead by April meets Fallen in Reverse. Oh, it sounds a lot like one of their works. That's really interesting. I like how isolated this piece is. This is really effective pacing. Again, the electronic side of the music is very dominant. Oh, this is really cool. I like it. Wanna know what it feels like? It's nothing but dreamlike. I wanna touch you now. Can it feel so right? It's nothing but dreamlike. This is a good mixture between traditional Dead by April elements with a much fresher and softer energy. But that dominant Dead by April edge, especially on the chorus sections, is really effective. That was beautiful. This is probably my favorite single thus far yet. If I'm grading it in comparison, it really is... I mean, I don't know if any of you guys feel this way. But again, I've had a long experience of listening to Dead by April, and I've listened to every track they've ever released. This has a very different personality to it. Like I said, in part, maybe you're not familiar with Fallen in Reverse. They're an American metal, hard rock, sometimes rap group. I mean, they very much have an alternative personality, and they're extremely capable. If you never listen to Falling in Reverse, they're gifted. Listening to this piece is a lot like, I'd say along the lines of perhaps it's less intense than Popular Monster or Zombified, but I get huge vibes when I listen to those chorus sections, especially on part of Christopher's vocals. I don't know why. I get such like a Falling in Reverse Ronnie Radke connection. It's really interesting with this piece, but different pacing. I mean, it's staged in contrast to the other works. Again, I'm not trying to be like it's a total deviation. In fact, I admire, when groups perhaps test their boundaries, especially on fresher angles. And many groups do this, again, to perhaps broaden their creative options, especially for a group that's been around as long as Dead by April has. And I forget maybe what year they originated, but because I came to them later, 2007 or so. So late 2000s. It's interesting to see groups adapt, especially when you're so used to set patterns. And true, they maintain, many maintain the traditionalist elements of what established them in the first place and what grounds them sort of as a musical foundation. And Dead by April, there's key signals here to that. I mean, again, the vocal capabilities, especially on Pontes, the harder chorus sections, the electronic undertones, it's much more severe here, and I liked the operation on that front, specifically on the reverbs, kind of towards the bridge into the scream section. It's just nice to get one of those in there. Again, I'll get to the differences, but there are dominant Dead by April mainstays with this piece, and again, if that's what you're looking for, and I do, I'd say I'm very much in both camps on this. It does have those traditionalist Dead by April sounds and cues. And yet the way it's organized, it's a very sentimental piece, too. I mean, again, there's established, to add as well into elements of familiarity, there's a dominant romance theme. Very true to their work. They deal a lot of emotions, especially centered around love and tragedy and things like that. They've done that in the past exceedingly. And they've perhaps departed from that in other places and other specific tracks, but it is a mainstay for them. Yet the softer personality on the verse structures, Christopher's vocals on this, I mean, how can I not mention that? Going on past Memory to the singles, because that's where he started, because again, they've swung through several unclean vocalists, and he's been the latest coming on with Memory. Heartbeat Failing, he offered some unclean. Maybe on a couple of the other singles, I forget specifically, but he's mostly, at least the way I've regarded him, an unclean vocalist. And he's, I like a good screamer and growler, and he's more than exceeded my expectations, and it's a pleasure to hear his talents in this group, especially as he came on later after some of the other vocalists they've had in the past. But I don't think it's ever been, if he has done clean vocals, it's never been this dominant. Not like Dreamlike. And I love the way his voice swung around. Again, like I said, real Ronnie Radke vibes. It's extremely interesting to me. Though it's a little harsher, and you can hear, again, a dominant strain, which I like, by the way. This piece is just, like I said, it feels very original, and yet it's form-fitting to expectations and familiarity of what Dead by April is built up on, but it does feel like a bit of an evolution, in part. And I'd be curious to see if maybe the album echoes this, because I listened to this, and again, it feels so different to me, especially on the key choices. And the way they utilize them in those chorus sections. There's just such a beauty to this work. It's immediate re-listen. Like, I've loved it, as I have every, other track I've heard from them thus far and what I've covered on the channel. All the singles have been great. Even the last one, the collaborative work between them and The Day We Left Earth. I still have to look at more of their music, but that piece was really good, too. Again, if you're looking for those traits that are familiarized in Dead by April's capabilities and past works echoed in a new piece, those are there. In excess even, but I do feel this piece stands apart a bit, and it's nice to hear again that fresher energy. I like this contrast that puts this particular piece in its own space a bit, even with the connective threads. And the lyrics, as I said, are beautifully sentimental, and I feel that the key choices, especially on those softer measures, really echo the emotional pull and the pathos this song is looking to demonstrate in part. And I'm assuming, again, this is sort of dealing with maybe in the context of romance, and I'm basing this on the video illustration. Tragedy, lost love, maybe broken relationship. I want to know what it feels like. Is it nothing but dreamlike? It's beautiful. Somebody kind of perhaps stuck in a phase of the past. Although, I will say, that sounds so bad. Like stuck in the past, but like somebody in a position of regret or loss or grief. Though I think this song can have broad appeal. I mean, I'm certainly good at this. I can. I always take unconventional paths and personalize everything I listen to, so maybe I see things perhaps the artists don't envision, which is fair among different artists. People always have different ways to come about and analyzing and personally applying the pieces. It depends on the lives lived. With me, I could certainly see, though I've said as much in the past, I'm a helpless romantic, though I've never been in a relationship. I've always been single. I've seen enough romance movies to know this is a very realistic emotional state for anybody, and the video certainly conveys that to someone like me. I can feel it. It connects with me on that level, again, if I can imagine it, sort of as a, experience for others. I really like the construction, too, on the verses. I want to cross the line with you. Let's pass the point of no return. A big mistake. I just want to be. I just want to be me. Boy, that line hits. You could, like I said, you could take this and make it apply to romantic situations. In this case, you could take the song and twist it around a bit if you wanted to. If you're in my position to portray the romance as more you're reminiscing or missing even a romanticized vision of yourself from the past or in the present perhaps, but someone buried down deep. Again, like I said, I take on unconventional paths to everything I analyze. I'm an anomaly in many respects. I've lived a very original life. But, again, as I was saying, you could take it to be more romantic in familiarity, or you could see it perhaps as a personal therapy song. As to be fair, many of their songs have gone down that path as well. I think, for example, the recent single releases of Collapsing, that song dealt with, I believe, depression, going on memory. It was a pretty significant piece from what I remember of it, even though maybe I'm getting I don't think I'm getting the theme wrong. But that piece I thought was conveyed strongly as well on an emotional level. On this, I read it and it's sometimes, to make this point clear, because I don't think I've mentioned this in the past when it comes to Dead by April coverage, but there are so many times where I go to edit the content I've made. I'm like, man, I wish I'd been able to. I wish I'd said this, but sometimes covering music on a first take is hard because you want to give everything equal attention, but certain songs need time to sink in a little more. And their past pieces have in the way that they personally connect. This one, I think in part the video helps to illustrate an emotional journey that is easy to instill, especially in experience, even if you're not personally, like I said, have dealt with a romance in your life. It still touches you. So a song like this, I don't necessarily have to spend as much time in engaging with it to see perhaps how it does connect. So where someone could look at it from the perspective of, regretting or grieving a lost romance, perhaps, I could see it maybe as a personal therapy song in the context of extracting, let's say, the couple lines, or let's pass the point of no return, I just want to be me, stuff like that. I could see it perhaps as a therapy song for, emotional regulation amid restoration and deconstruction of self. As I've said, for the last 4 years, it's a journey I've had to take by necessity, given a strong background, at least of over 2 decades of emotional and psychological abuse. So a song like this, perhaps, again, there's that crossover of how it could personally apply to me, where it is a little more singular and perhaps detracts from the artist's vision. But it's still faithful, if you just want to reimagine it a bit while keeping it of faith to how it was originally crafted. I think it's a beautiful piece in regards to the writing. The song really impresses me in how distinct it is. Because even if it is mainstream Dead by April, in part, there are still those wavering points where you feel like it is a bit of its own independent thing. So I'm curious to hear again, like I said, if this has been an evolution of sound and management and tune structure going forward. I don't know if it is or not. But I find it curious. Either way, I think it's a really strong piece, and like I said, an immediate repeat listen. I love Dreamlike. It's quite beautiful. And hearing Christopher's vocal range on that with the clean side, again, he's not had that much of a presence in that regard in past singles from what I'm familiarized to, maybe in semblance, but not for that duration. So many of the artists I've consulted in Europe have such beautiful voices. Christopher's no different. To stand right alongside Pontus, they both impress me, and I think they really add to a nice track here in terms of an experience. It was a beautiful work to listen to. And I'd imagine for many of you, it's going to be the same testimony offered. If you wish to disclose your perspective down below. And I'd also love to hear again what angle you come from. If you're a long-time established Dead by April fan, perhaps like me, or you're a fresh listener. And if you are a fresh listener, I highly recommend going and engaging with their past library. You won't regret it. If you like this piece, you'll like their stuff from years past or even more recent past. And all the singles that led up to where we'll be on May 5th. And I can't wait to hear more. I imagine we'll probably get some more single releases going forward, even though there's not much of a time towards an album unveiling. Maybe one track more or so, I don't know. I'll probably cover some more of their works on this channel from that, we'll see. But let me know your thoughts down below if you, like I said, you wish to disclose your perspective. I like Dreamlike a lot. I think it's a beautiful track. I knew it would be. Again, this is Dead by April we're talking about, and I'm operating on about, like I said, near a decade of familiarity. Getting close to that, I think. I've been very impressed with their offerings over those numbers of years, and Dreamlike, I do feel in comparison to past works, is just as equipped, from other releases, but it does stand apart specifically in perhaps its key choice and maybe adjacent influences of what it sounds reminiscent of in my, metal familiarity. The vocal structuring, even some of the particular electronic choices, which worked for me. I like it. Even though, again, those elements in particular intersect into mainstream Dead by April. And so if you enjoy them in that regard of what you've been familiarized to in years past, it's a very faithful piece in that respect. But it does provide, at least in my opinion, some fresh adaptation that I find quite enamoring. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.